The world called Sigma-7 was a frozen wasteland. Wind howled across plains of ice and rock. The sky was always gray. Nothing grew here. It was the perfect place to die, which was exactly why the Council had sent humans here. But Commander Hyunwoo Lee stood in the command bunker, surrounded by his officers, and refused to accept that fate. Captain Soman Bae had just finished her 20th attempt to break through the quantum blockade. Every frequency was jammed. Every protocol was blocked. The Council had shut them out completely. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but her voice was steady when she reported. Earth couldn't hear them. Nobody could. Lieutenant Jun Huang had worse news. He'd analyzed the Ravager attack patterns over the past month. The creatures were becoming more organized, more focused. It was as if they knew the humans were cut off. They were pressing harder, attacking more frequently. Resources were running out. Ammunition was down to 30%. Food supplies would last maybe 4 more months if they rationed carefully. After that, nothing. The other officers looked grim. Some suggested trying to capture a council ship if one ever came close. Others proposed attempting to repair a quantum gate themselves, though none of them really understood the technology. A few wondered if they should try to negotiate with the Ravagers, though everyone knew that was impossible. The creatures were mindless killers. Hyunwoo Lee listened to every suggestion. Then he surprised them all. He told them to bring in Chief Engineer Yuna Song. When Yuna arrived, covered in grease and looking like she hadn't slept in days, Hyunwoo asked her a simple question. Could they use Ravager technology? The room went silent. The idea seemed insane. Ravagers were biological nightmares, more like animals than machines. But Yuna thought about it. She'd been studying the wreckage from every battle, trying to understand what made the creatures tick. She'd noticed something. The Ravagers used organic technology, but it followed patterns. It had structure. It could be understood, she said she would try. Hyunwoo gave her whatever resources she needed. Within days, Yuna had a team of engineers pulling apart dead Ravagers, studying their biology, mapping their neural systems. What they found was disturbing but useful. The Ravagers weren't completely natural. They'd been modified, enhanced, turned into living weapons by someone a long time ago. While Yuna worked on technology, Jun Huang focused on tactics. He realized something the Council had never bothered to learn. Ravagers were predictable. They attacked in waves. They always went for the strongest targets first. They never retreated. The Council species had fought them like a natural disaster, something to be endured. But humans knew how to hunt. Sergeant Yoonji Kang took those insights to the field. She led small teams on raids deep into Ravager territory. Instead of defending positions, they attacked the nests. Instead of fighting the swarms head-on, they set traps and ambushes. Private Daehyun Nam volunteered for the most dangerous missions, the ones where soldiers had to get close enough to plant explosives inside Ravager breeding chambers. The tactics worked. Not perfectly and not without cost. Humans died every day, but they were killing Ravagers faster than the Ravagers could kill them. More importantly, they were learning. Every battle taught them something new. Every dead creature gave Yuna more material to study. 3 months after the betrayal, Yuna Song made her first breakthrough. She'd figured out how Ravager bioships worked. They weren't piloted in the traditional sense. They were grown, with nervous systems that could be interfaced with. She thought humans could control them. The first test was terrifying. A volunteer pilot climbed into the organic cockpit of a captured ship. When the connection formed, he screamed. The sensations were overwhelming, alien, wrong, but after an hour he could make the ship move. After a day he could fly it. Hyunwoo Lee immediately saw the potential. If humans could fly Ravager ships, they could move between the worlds without relying on quantum gates. They could scout, raid, and maybe even escape this trap. He ordered Yuna to train more pilots, no matter how difficult or painful the process was. While humans learned to use Ravager technology, they also explored the abandoned Council facilities scattered across the Outer Rim. These had been research stations once before the Council pulled back. Most had been stripped clean, but Science Officer Hana Yoon found one that still had active databases. What Hana discovered changed everything. She found files marked with the highest security classifications, files that detailed something called the Ravager Genesis Project. The creatures weren't from the edge of space. They weren't a natural disaster or an unknown threat. They'd been created. Thousands of years ago, one of the Council's precursor species had engineered the Ravagers as bioweapons. They were meant to be the ultimate soldiers, creatures that could survive anywhere, adapt to any environment, and destroy any enemy. But the creators lost control. The Ravagers evolved beyond their programming. They broke free and began spreading across the galaxy. The Council's ancestors had fought a terrible war to contain them, pushing the Ravagers to the outer rim. But they never destroyed them completely. Instead, they decided to use them. Any species that became too aggressive, too ambitious, too dangerous to the Council's order was invited to help defend against the Ravagers. It was genocide disguised as honor. Hana brought the data to Hyunwoo Lee. For a long moment, the commander just stared at the evidence. 19 civilizations had been sacrificed this way. Billions of lives erased. The Council had committed this atrocity over and over, and they'd almost gotten away with it again. But humans had survived. Against impossible odds in a hostile environment, cut off from everything they knew, they'd adapted. They'd learned. They'd become something the Council never expected them to be. They'd become hunters. Hyunwoo made a decision. They would send a message back to Earth, but not a cry for help. They needed to warn humanity about what the Council really was. They needed Earth to be ready for what would come next. Using a modified Ravager communication node and every bit of power they could spare, they sent a quantum burst toward Earth. It was heavily encrypted, compressed, and carried everything they'd learned. The message included the Council's crimes, the truth about the Ravagers, and proof of the betrayal. At the end, Hyunwoo added one more thing, a promise. If Earth could open the quantum gates, humanity wouldn't come home as refugees. They would return as an army. The message went out, and then there was nothing to do but wait and survive. Yoonji Kang continued her raids. Daehyun Nam kept volunteering for impossible missions. Yuna Song improved the Ravager technology integration. Jun Huang refined their tactics. Salman Bey trained new pilots for the bioships. Months passed. Human forces consolidated around Sigma-7, turning the frozen world into a fortress. They captured more Ravager technology, built hybrid weapons that combined human engineering with alien biology. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were thriving in hell. And deep in space, moving through the quantum network at speeds faster than light, a small encrypted message reached Earth's outer defense stations. Within hours, it was in Admiral Ji-won Kim's hands. Within days, every government on Earth knew the truth. The galaxy had betrayed humanity, but humanity wasn't dead. They were waiting. And they were very, very angry. Dr. Soojin Park hadn't slept in 48 hours. Her eyes burned as she stared at the quantum gate equations covering the walls of her lab. Next to her, Dr. Kyung-ro drank his 6th cup of coffee and muttered calculations under his breath. They'd been trying to crack the Council's gate technology since the moment Admiral Ji-won Kim received Commander Hyunwoo Lee's message. That message had changed everything on Earth. When people learned what the Council had done, there was no debate. Every nation united instantly. The political arguments that had divided humanity for centuries vanished. There was only one question that mattered. How do we bring our people home? President Min Jae-choi addressed the entire planet from the United Earth Assembly. His speech was short. He explained the betrayal. He shared the evidence. He told humanity that 200,000 of their sons and daughters were stranded in hell, fighting alone because the galaxy's so-called civilized species had left them to die. Then he said something that would echo through history. He said humanity would answer this crime with everything they had. Every resource, every scientist, every soldier. The galaxy would learn that you don't betray humans and walk away. Ji-won Kim was given complete authority over Earth's military. She'd been preparing for interstellar war since the day humans first met aliens. Now that preparation would be tested. She mobilized every defense force on the planet. Factories that made civilian transports started building warships. Research facilities that studied peaceful applications of quantum technology started designing weapons. But none of it mattered if they couldn't open the gates. That's where Soojin and Kyung came in. They studied every piece of Council technology Earth had access to. They ran simulations. They tested theories. And finally, after 3 months of non-stop work, they found it. A backdoor in the quantum network. The Council had designed the gates to be controlled from their end, but the original architects had left maintenance access. Just in case. Just for emergencies, this was definitely an emergency. Sujin input the commands with shaking hands. The gate to Sigma 7 began to power up. On the other side, 18 months after being abandoned, Hyunwoo Lee received an alert. The gate was opening. For a moment he thought it might be a council trick. Then he saw the identification codes. Earth codes. But Hyunwoo didn't send refugees through that gate. He sent an armada. The ships that emerged near Earth were nightmares. Ravager biovessels retrofitted with human weapons. Hybrid craft that mixed organic technology with Earth's engineering. They looked like they'd been grown rather than built. All sharp edges and organic curves pulsing with unnatural life. The council would have been horrified. Humans just saw them as tools. Jiwon Kim met with Hyunwoo Lee the moment his flagship entered Earth orbit. The commander looked older, harder, like he'd aged a decade in 18 months. His officers looked the same. Summon Bei's hair had gone partially gray. Jun Huang had scars across his face. Unisong moved with a limp. These were not the same people who had left. Hyunwoo handed Ji-won complete records of everything they'd learned. The Ravager technology, the Council's crimes, the tactical data. Everything. Unisong worked with Earth's engineers to upgrade every human ship with the new hybrid systems. Within weeks, Earth's fleet looked completely different. Faster, deadlier, and utterly terrifying. The plan was simple. Humanity would strike first, strike hard, and strike where it would hurt most. Not at military targets. At the Council's pride. The Nexus was the Council's great achievement. A massive station that served as the galaxy's trading hub, where species conducted commerce and diplomacy. It was neutral ground, supposedly untouchable. Thousands of ships passed through daily. It was the symbol of galactic civilization. Captain Woo Jin Han commanded the assault fleet. He was a newcomer to this war, someone who'd been on Earth when the betrayal happened, but he understood what needed to be done. The Nexus needed to fall, and it needed to fall in a way the entire galaxy would see. The attack came without warning. Human ships dropped out of quantum gates inside the Nexus defensive perimeter. The station's shields went up immediately, but they were designed to stop traditional weapons. The hybrid bioweapons that humans had developed cut through them like paper. Woo Jin Han's forces disabled the weapon systems in the first 10 minutes. Then came the boarding parties. Yoonji Kang, now a lieutenant, led Marines through the station corridors. They didn't kill indiscriminately. They targeted security forces, disabled defenses, and secured critical areas. The goal was occupation, not destruction. Within 6 hours, the Nexus was under human control. Woo Jin Han broadcast from the command center. The message went out to every council world, every species in the galaxy. Commander Minho Park, who'd been there at the beginning when Earth joined the council, delivered it. He explained what had happened. He showed the evidence. He detailed how the council had committed genocide 19 times before. He let the galaxy see the truth about the creatures they'd trusted to lead them. And then he said something simple. The council had taught humanity its place in the galaxy. They'd shown humans what civilization really meant. Humanity had learned those lessons well. The reaction was immediate. On the council homeworlds, panic spread. The Vectari representative demanded immediate military action. The Sultan Empire offered their entire armada to retake the Nexus. But High Counselor Reuven, the ancient being who'd welcomed humanity into the council less than 2 years ago, felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. He'd seen species fight before. He'd watched civilizations rage against their fate. But humanity was different. They weren't fighting like victims seeking justice. They were fighting like predators that had been wounded and were now hunting the thing that hurt them. An emergency council session convened. All 47 species sent representatives, though some came reluctantly. The chamber that had once seemed so beautiful to Minho Park now felt like a prison. The council argued for days. Some wanted total war. Others suggested negotiation. A few quietly began withdrawing their forces, preparing to defend their own worlds. That's when humanity's second message arrived. Terms. Not a request, but a demand. Full reparations for every human life lost. Complete access to all council records, including the classified files they'd hidden for millennia. Immediate disarmament of the 7 species most responsible for the betrayal. And one more thing, a summit. On Earth. The council would come to humanity's homeworld and answer for their crimes. They would stand trial on human soil, before human eyes, with the entire galaxy watching. The deadline was 7 days. If the council refused, humanity would consider it a declaration of war. And this time, humans wouldn't be the ones fighting alone on the frontier. The war would come to the council's core worlds. Reuven knew they had no choice. He'd started this by underestimating humanity. He'd thought they were just another aggressive species that could be disposed of. He'd been catastrophically wrong. The council agreed to the summit. They would go to Earth. They would answer humanity's charges. But they would bring an armada, the largest fleet ever assembled. If talks failed, they would destroy Earth and end this threat once and for all. Jiwon Kim smiled when she heard about the armada. Let them come with their ships. Let them think their numbers meant something. They were about to learn another lesson about humanity. Humans had spent their entire history fighting when outnumbered. They'd refined it into an art form. High above Earth, construction crews worked day and night. The planet's defenses were upgraded with Ravager technology. Quantum mines were positioned throughout the solar system. And surrounding all of it, Earth's fleet waited. Ships that looked like they'd been born from nightmares crewed by humans who'd survived hell and come home angry. The galaxy was about to get a new education, and the first lesson would be taught in Earth's skies. Tokyo had changed. The city that once sparkled with neon lights and celebrated peace now bristled with weapons. Captain Salmon Bay walked through the streets, watching construction crews fortify buildings. Anti-air batteries sat on rooftops. Soldiers checked identification at every corner. This wasn't just preparation for a summit. This was preparation for war. Geneva and New Seoul looked the same. Earth's major cities had transformed into fortresses in just 7 days. Lieutenant Jun Huang coordinated the security arrangements from a command center beneath the UN building. Every council ship would be scanned. Every representative would be monitored. If they tried anything, humanity would be ready. Above Earth's atmosphere, the scene was even more tense. The council's armada had arrived, hundreds of ships representing dozens of species. They formed a threatening formation, weapons powered but not targeted. It was meant to intimidate, but surrounding that armada, like predators circling prey, were human vessels. The hybrid bioships looked organic and wrong, nothing like traditional spacecraft. Between them floated quantum mines, invisible but deadly. Fleet Admiral Dongyun Seo commanded the human fleet from his flagship. He sent a simple message to the Council Armada. Their ships existed here because humanity allowed it. They were guests in this system. If they forgot that, they would never leave. High Counselor Reuven descended to Earth's surface with 46 other representatives. For someone who'd lived thousands of years, who'd seen civilizations rise and fall, this was humbling. He'd never had to answer to a younger species before. The Council had always been above such things. Now he walked through human streets, surrounded by human soldiers, heading toward human justice. The summit took place in a massive amphitheater built specifically for this event. It could hold 10,000 people and every seat was filled. But more importantly, it was broadcasting across the quantum network. Every species in the galaxy could watch. This wasn't just a trial. It was a message. Commander Hyunwoo Lee testified first. He stood before the assembled council and explained in simple, clear language what they'd done. How they'd invited humanity to join the defense initiative. How they'd positioned human forces in kill zones. How they'd cut off supplies and communications. How they'd left 200,000 humans to die alone on hostile worlds. His voice never rose. He didn't shout or rage. He just stated facts, but every word landed like a hammer blow. The council representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sergeant Yoonji Kang testified next. She showed her scars, the ones from Ravager claws that had nearly killed her. She described watching friends die because there was no ammunition, no medical supplies, no hope of rescue. She explained how humans had been forced to eat rations meant to last months over a year. How they'd learned to turn dead Ravagers into tools just to survive. How every single day had been a choice between fighting or dying. Science Officer Hana Yoon brought the evidence. She displayed the files she'd found in the abandoned Council research station. The Ravager Genesis Project. The truth about how these creatures were created as weapons. The records of 19 other species that had been invited to defend against them. 19 civilizations that no longer existed. The amphitheater went completely silent as that information spread across the galaxy. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds learned that their leaders had committed systematic genocide for millennia. The Council, the organization that claimed to represent order and civilization, had been executing species they deemed inconvenient. Some council representatives tried to leave. Human Marines blocked the exits. This trial would continue until humanity was satisfied. Then it was the council's turn to defend themselves. High Counselor Reuven stood. He was dignified, ancient, and utterly unrepentant. He explained that the galaxy required order, that stability had to be maintained, that aggressive species like humanity threatened that balance. The Ravagers were a convenient solution to an eternal problem. Young, violent civilizations needed to be controlled. Sometimes that meant sacrifice. He argued that humanity should be grateful. They'd survived, which proved they deserved to exist. They should accept their victory and rejoin the Council under proper supervision. The galaxy needed leadership, and the Council had provided it for 10,000 years. Nothing humanity had suffered compared to the greater good. Other representatives added their own justifications. The Vectari diplomat claimed it was natural selection. The Sultan ambassador said weak species didn't deserve protection. The Koresh representative suggested humanity was overreacting. Jun Huang, watching from the security station, couldn't believe what he was hearing. They weren't even pretending to be sorry. They genuinely believed they'd done nothing wrong. President Min Jae-choi had been sitting quietly throughout the proceedings. He'd listened to every testimony, examined every piece of evidence, heard every justification. Now he stood up. The amphitheater fell silent. The galaxy waited. This was the moment for negotiation, for compromise, for finding a peaceful solution that both sides could accept. That's how diplomacy worked. That's how civilized species resolved conflicts. Everyone expected Min-jae to propose terms, to begin talks, to find a middle ground. But Min-jae had grown up reading history. He knew about every time humanity had compromised with monsters, every time they'd sought peace with those who saw them as nothing but tools to be used and discarded. He knew how those compromises always ended. With more suffering, with more betrayal, with the monsters getting stronger while their victims got weaker. The galaxy had shown humanity what it truly was. A system where the strong used the weak, where genocide was policy, where honor was a lie told to the gullible. The Council had given humans a clear picture of galactic civilization, and Min-jae was about to give them humanity's response. He stepped up to the speaking platform. Every camera focused on him. Every translator activated. Billions of beings across the galaxy waited to hear what humanity would demand. Reparations, probably. Territory, perhaps. A seat on the Council with real power, certainly. That's what species did after proving themselves. They negotiated for a better position in the existing order. Min-jae spoke one word. Just one. It transmitted across every quantum channel to every species in the galaxy. One syllable that carried the weight of humanity's judgment on the Council and everything it represented. No. Not a negotiation. Not a demand. Not a threat. Just a refusal. Complete and absolute. The Council representatives looked confused. Reuven asked what humanity meant. Were they refusing the terms? Refusing to negotiate? What exactly were they refusing? Min-jae let the silence stretch. Then he explained. Humanity refused to accept the Council's authority. Refused to acknowledge their right to lead. Refused to participate in their system. Refused to pretend that what they'd done was anything other than mass murder. Refused to join a galaxy that operated on the principle that some species were disposable. Humanity rejected the Council. All of it. Not just the current leadership, but the entire concept. Humans would not join a new council under new terms. They would not accept reforms. They would not negotiate for a better position in a fundamentally broken system. That one word, no, was humanity's declaration of independence from galactic civilization as it currently existed. The Council had shown humans what the galaxy was. Humans had judged it and found it unworthy. The amphitheater erupted. Some Council representatives shouted. Others demanded to know what humanity wanted instead. A few seemed to understand the implications and looked terrified. Min-jae didn't explain further. He didn't need to. That single word contained everything. Humanity was done with the Council, done with their rules, done with their galaxy. If the rest of the universe wanted to continue living under the Council's order, that was their choice. But humans would have no part of it. Ji-won Kim, watching from the military command center, smiled. That was the most human response possible. When faced with a corrupt system, don't try to reform it. Don't negotiate for better terms. Just walk away and build something better. But the council wasn't going to let humanity walk away. Not after this humiliation. Not after being rejected in front of the entire galaxy. High Counselor Reuven's expression hardened. If humans wouldn't accept the council's authority, then they would be reminded why the council had ruled for 10,000 years. The galaxy was about to split in two. And that one word, that simple no, was the crack that would shatter everything. The council's armada left Earth's orbit in formation, their ships burning with barely contained rage. High Counselor Reuven returned to the council chamber expecting immediate unity. Instead, he found chaos. Within 3 days of humanity's refusal, 17 species withdrew their representatives. They sent formal notices terminating their membership. The council, which had stood for 10,000 years, was fracturing. The Thalen Collective was first to openly ally with humanity. They were an older species, one that had survived their own encounter with council manipulation centuries ago. Their ambassador arrived on Earth with a simple message. They remembered being where humans were now. They would not stand with the council this time. Other species followed. Some declared neutrality. Others began fortifying their borders not against ravagers but against the council itself. Admiral Jiwon Kim didn't wait for the dust to settle. She'd learned the most important military lesson in human history. When your enemy is confused and divided, press the advantage. Human forces moved quickly to secure the Quantum Gate network. They claimed 37 systems the council had declared restricted territory. These were resource-rich worlds the council had kept for themselves, denying them to younger species. Commander Minho Park established forward command on Velcor Prime, the former council capital world. The symbolism was deliberate. The beings who'd once ruled the galaxy now watched human ships patrol their skies. Minho sent regular reports back to Earth, documenting how the council had lived, the wealth they'd accumulated, the luxury they'd enjoyed while sending others to die. It made humans even angrier. But the real work was happening in laboratories across human space. Chief Engineer Yuna Song had been working on something since the day they'd first studied Ravager biology. She'd noticed that the creatures weren't just weapons. They'd been slaves. Their neural programming forced them to attack, to kill, to spread. It wasn't their nature. It was their chains. Yuna developed a counter-virus. It was delicate work, requiring her to essentially rewrite genetic code at a fundamental level. But after months of testing, she succeeded. When released into Ravager communication networks, the virus spread through the hive minds. It didn't kill the creatures. It freed them. The results were startling. Some Ravagers continued attacking, their aggression too deeply ingrained, but others stopped mid-battle, confused as if waking from a dream. For the first time in thousands of years, they had choice. They had thoughts beyond the programming that had defined them. A group of freed Ravagers approached human forces on Sigma-7, the frozen world where humanity had first learned to survive. Lieutenant Eunji Kang, who'd killed hundreds of them, now stood face to face with a creature trying to communicate. It was primitive at first, just images and emotions. But the meaning was clear: gratitude. These beings understood what humans had done for them. Not everyone in humanity was comfortable with this development. These were the monsters that had killed their friends. But Hyunwoo Lee made the call. The Ravagers had been victims too, weapons created and then abandoned by the same council that had tried to destroy humanity. If they wanted peace, humans would give them a chance. The freed Ravagers, who began calling themselves the Rekindled, became unexpected allies. They knew things about the galaxy that no other species did. They'd been to worlds long forgotten, seen civilizations rise and fall, witnessed the council's crimes across millennia. And they were angry about what had been done to them. But the council wasn't done. 7 species, the ones most responsible for humanity's betrayal, formed a military alliance. The Koresh Dominion, the Velkari Imperium, and 5 others pooled their forces. They outnumbered humanity 3-1. Their plan was simple: destroy Earth, kill every human, and restore order to the galaxy. The final battle was set to take place at the Nexus, the station humans had captured. Captain Taiyang Cho commanded the defense. He had human ships, Thalen cruisers, and for the first time rekindled biovessels fighting alongside them. It seemed impossible. The council forces were too numerous, too powerful. But Jun Huang had been studying their tactics for 2 years. He'd learned something the council had forgotten during 10,000 years of easy dominance. Large armies were powerful, but they were also slow. They required coordination, communication, and unified command, all things that could be disrupted. The battle lasted 6 days. Human forces used every trick they'd learned fighting Ravagers. They set traps in asteroid fields. They launched hit-and-run attacks that forced the Council fleet to spread out. They used quantum mines to separate the enemy formations, and they fought with a ferocity that shocked their opponents. On the 4th day, Private Daehyun Nam, now a lieutenant after 2 years of war, led a boarding party onto the Koresh flagship. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. But Daehyun had volunteered for 100 suicide missions and survived them all. This time was no different. His team fought through the ship's corridors, disabled its command systems, and set charges in the reactor core. When the Koresh flagship exploded, it took 3 other Council vessels with it. The explosion was visible across the battlefield. The remaining Council forces, already struggling against human tactics, broke formation. Some ships tried to retreat. Others fought on in desperation. By the 6th day, it was over. The Council forces surrendered or fled. Humanity had won. But the cost was terrible. 40% of the human fleet was gone. Thousands of soldiers dead. Captain Soman Bey was badly wounded. Daehyun Nam survived his mission but lost his left arm. Taeyang Cho, the brilliant tactician, died when his command ship was destroyed on the final day. But they'd proven something important. The Council was not invincible. Their 10,000 years of dominance had made them weak, reliant on tradition and old strategies. Humanity, forged in betrayal and tempered by survival, had become something the galaxy had never seen before. 1 year after humanity spoke that single word, the galaxy was transformed. The old Council was gone, dissolved by internal collapse and external pressure. In its place, dozens of independent alliances formed. Species that had been forced into unity now explored genuine cooperation. Trade agreements replaced tribute systems. Mutual defense pacts replaced forced military service. Humanity led something called the Free Systems Coalition. It had simple principles: transparency in all dealings, mutual defense without forced participation, and most importantly, the right of any species to leave at any time. No one would be trapped in a system they didn't believe in. No one would be used as disposable soldiers. No one would be betrayed. 30 species joined immediately. Others watched carefully, waiting to see if humans would keep their promises. Humanity understood the skepticism. Trust took time to build, especially after the Council had broken it so thoroughly. Commander Hyunwoo Lee retired and returned to Earth. He'd spent 2 years in hell and another year at war. He was tired. But before he left military service, he helped design the memorial in New Seoul. 200,000 names carved in black stone. Every human who'd been sent to the Outer Rim. Some had died there. Others had survived and fought their way home. All of them deserved to be remembered. Sergeant Yoonji Kang didn't retire. She became the Coalition's first integration officer, working with the Rekindled to help them build their own civilization. It was strange work, teaching former weapons how to live in peace. But Yoonji had spent 2 years learning to see beyond the monsters. She knew they deserved a chance. Science Officer Hana Yoon continued her research, now with access to laboratories across the Coalition. Her goal was to ensure that no species would ever again weaponize biology against another. She created safeguards, designed monitoring systems, and taught others how to recognize the warning signs. The galaxy had made that mistake once. It wouldn't happen again on her watch. President Min Jae-choi gave a speech at the memorial dedication. He talked about sacrifice, about resilience, about the price of freedom. But he also talked about the future, about a galaxy where species work together by choice rather than compulsion, where strength came from cooperation rather than domination, where saying no to injustice was not just allowed but celebrated. Admiral Ji-won Kim stood at the back of the ceremony watching. She was old now, gray-haired and tired, but she smiled as she listened to Min Jae's speech. Humanity had been tested in the worst possible way. They'd been betrayed, abandoned, left to die, and they'd responded not with despair but with defiance. They'd survived, fought back, and built something better above Earth. The quantum gates pulsed with constant traffic, ships from dozens of species coming and going freely. Trade flourished. Knowledge spread. The galaxy was learning to live without the Council's iron grip. It wasn't always easy. Some species struggled with the concept of genuine independence. Others tried to recreate the old power structures. But the Free Systems Coalition stood firm, and on every human vessel in every command center, One phrase was engraved as a reminder: they betrayed us. We commanded the order. Remember, 50 years later, things had changed even more. The coalition encompassed 200 species. Young cadets from across the galaxy studied at academies on Earth, learning human tactics and the principles of the coalition. The word council had become synonymous with tyranny. The great chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that caught the light of distant stars. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, watching the center platform with varying degrees of interest and impatience. This was the Galactic Council, the ruling body that had maintained order across known space for over 10,000 years. High Arbiter Velthar stood at the center platform, his insectoid body gleaming under the bright lights. His multiple eyes scanned the assembled representatives as his translator device converted his clicking sounds into words everyone could understand. Today was special. Today they would deal with the human problem once and for all. We gather here to address a serious violation of council law, Velthar announced, his voice carrying authority that came from centuries of unchallenged power. The species known as humanity has been expanding into forbidden territories without permission. They have established 23 colonies in zones reserved for future council use. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species clicked their approval, others hummed in agreement. The forbidden zones were sacred, set aside by ancient council decree. No one was supposed to colonize there. No one had dared to challenge this rule in living memory. Ambassador Ji Woo sat in the human section, a small area compared to the sprawling spaces given to older council members. She was a woman in her mid-40s wearing a simple dark suit that looked plain compared to the elaborate robes and biological displays of other species. Her face showed nothing as she listened to the charges against her people. For 50 years, humans have ignored our warnings, continued Velthar. They have built cities, established trade routes, and fortified these illegal settlements. This cannot stand. The council's authority must be respected. Trade Master Quinn rose from his water-filled chamber, his amphibious body dripping as he spoke. The economic damage alone is staggering. These zones were meant for controlled development. Human presence has disrupted carefully planned resource allocation. War Chief Bractor, a massive reptilian creature covered in natural armor plates, slammed his clawed hand against his station. They mock us with their silence. Every message we send goes unanswered. Every warning ignored. This is not just violation of law. This is contempt for this council. Jiwoo remained still, her hands folded in her lap. She had been sitting here for 3 hours listening to species after species condemn humanity. Not once had she interrupted. Not once had she asked to speak. This seemed to irritate the council more than anything else. Does the human representative have nothing to say? Velthar demanded, his tone sharp with annoyance. Jiwoo looked up, met his multiple eyes with her own steady gaze, and said nothing. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Several representatives shifted in their seats. In council tradition, silence during accusations was considered an admission of guilt. Surely the humans understood this. Velthar decided to move forward. Very well. The council has prepared terms for humanity. You will listen and you will comply. He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. First, all 23 colonies in forbidden zones must be evacuated within 6 standard months. Second, humanity will pay reparations totaling 5 trillion credits for unauthorized resource extraction. Third, all human military vessels must be registered with Council Defense Coordination. Fourth, humanity will accept a council overseer who will approve all future expansion. The terms appeared in multiple languages on screens throughout the chamber. Jiwoo read them without expression. These terms are generous, Velthar continued. We could have demanded complete withdrawal from your outer territories. We could have seized your merchant fleet. Instead, we offer a path to legitimacy. Accept these terms, submit to proper council authority, and humanity can continue as a junior member of galactic civilization. Junior member, Bractor repeated with satisfaction, as appropriate for such a young and aggressive species. Other representatives voiced agreement. The humans had only been in space for 200 years. Most council species had been traveling between stars for millennia. It was only natural that humanity should learn their place in the established order. Velthar turned his attention fully to Jiwoo. Ambassador, you have heard our terms. We require your government's response. Will humanity comply with council authority? Jiwoo stood slowly. She was not particularly tall, especially compared to some of the massive beings in the chamber, but something about the way she moved made representatives pay attention. She walked to the edge of her platform, looking out at the assembled species with calm, dark eyes. "High Arbiter," she said, her voice clear and steady. "Members of the Galactic Council, I have listened to your charges. I have reviewed your terms. I have heard your demands." Velthar leaned forward slightly, and Jiwoo paused, letting the silence build again. Then she spoke a single word, "No." The chamber erupted. Representatives jumped from their seats, voices rising in shock and outrage. Translator devices struggled to keep up with the chaos. How could she refuse? Did she not understand the power of the council? Did humanity have any idea what they were risking? But Jiwoo was already walking toward the exit. She did not run. She did not hurry. She simply turned and walked away as if the shouting behind her was of no concern whatsoever. "You cannot simply leave." Velthar called after her. "We have not dismissed you, Ambassador." Jiwoo reached the door, placed her hand on the exit panel, and paused. She looked back over her shoulder at the chaos she was leaving behind. "The United Earth government does not recognize your authority over our colonies," she said calmly. "We do not accept your terms. We will not be negotiating today." "You must negotiate," Quinn shouted, his voice distorted with anger. "This is how civilized species resolve disputes." "Then perhaps," Jiwoo replied. "We are not what you consider civilized." She stepped through the door, and it sealed behind her with a soft hiss. For several seconds, no one in the chamber moved or spoke. Then the outrage returned, louder than before. "This is an act of war," Braktor roared. "They must be taught respect," another representative added. 50 ships, someone else said. "Intelligence reports they have barely 50 registered warships in the sector. We could overwhelm them easily." Velthar raised his hands for silence. When the chamber finally quieted, he spoke with cold determination. "Convene the War Committee. If humanity will not accept peace, we will impose order by force. The Council has spoken for 10,000 years. We will not be defied by primitives who have barely learned to leave their own star system." The vote was called. 45 species voted in favor of military action. Only 2 abstained. None voted against. As the council chamber emptied, representatives already discussing fleet deployments and invasion plans, none of them noticed the small detail in the human section. Ambassador Jiwoo had left behind a data tablet on her seat. On its screen was a simple message in human script, though no one there could read it. It said, "They always choose war. Proceed to Protocol Songbird." Far away on Earth and on 23 colonies throughout the Forbidden Zones, human military commanders received the same message. They had been waiting for it. They had been preparing for it for 50 years. Now the wait was over.